This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Squarespace, the fastest, easiest, most professional, user-friendly, customer-supported
delicious
way to make your very own website, portfolio, blog, or online store. If you go to squarespace.com and use the offer code THUMBS at checkout, you will get 10% off your first order. That is squarespace.com with the offer code THUMBS.
Cool. Welcome to Idle Thumbs, the hottest show on YouTube.
Your weekly dose of gaming goodness.
Yeah. Sponsored by Gamer Grub.
What?
It's September 7th, 2017.
This is Idle Thumbs 311. I am Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin. We're recording this deep in the past when our world still existed barely. So apologies if the world does not exist when this podcast comes out.
Yeah, sorry.
And if all the games we're talking about are old and busted by then.
Yep.
That'd be even worse.
Yeah. Well, we will be slightly closer to one thing happening that I had not heard about until like 5 minutes ago, which was, it was written to us in an email from Logan Brown, who says, "Hey all, I don't know if this has flown across your radars yet, but this seems like a dream collab for Chris." And I clicked on the link, and this is amazing. This was, I don't know, I guess by the time you hear this, a couple weeks ago, this was announced. Derek Yu, the designer of Spelunky.
Oh, this is cool.
Oh, so you do know about this?
Yes.
Yeah. And Ojiro Fumoto, the designer of Downwell. Both games I love. Spelunky in particular, a game I think is like truly one of the all-time great games. Like, you know, absolutely, I maintain that. Those two designers have teamed up to make something called UFO 50, a collection of 50 games.
I thought there were 5 developers involved in UFO 50.
Oh yeah, it looks like also Eirik Surk, he was the composer on Spelunky.
Okay.
John Perry, who made something called Time Barons, which rings a bell, but I can't bring it to mind. Paul Hubens of Pixel Pusher. So yeah, you're right. There were 5.
Yeah.
The headline was just those two guys. I see. Anyway, this is a collection of 50 games, each of which is, quote, slightly smaller than commercial 8-bit titles from the 80s. And they make a point to say these are not like micro games or mini games. They are full games. And the sort of conceit behind UFO 50 is that these were games created in the 80s by a fictional company that was obscure but ahead of its time, all connected by a unique 32-color palette and other restrictions we decided on to make them feel more authentic. They will all be single-player games, and roughly a third of them will have competitive or cooperative multiplayer. I'm really glad, by the way, that they're all single-player games, because that's just what I'm going to do. And this seems like the kind of project that these days a lot of them would be like local multiplayer, which is really fun, but also not always practical.
Yeah, there's not enough people around.
Anyway, this is coming to PC and possibly other platforms in 2018. That's bonkers.
Yeah,
that's
it's
totally
really ambitious and really cool.
Bananas. Yeah.
The trailer for it is also just shocking because it looks like they've achieved their goal. I mean, Derek Yu is an amazing pixel artist. And I mean, he has been he's been doing this stuff for like 15 years now, and it's always been mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this feels like a lot of people stretching their muscles in a super impressive way. What's it called again?
UFO 50.
Yeah, it looks really neat. Go watch the trailer for that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that on Idle Thumbs episode 314.
Yeah, there's anyway, in terms of games that do exist already that we have played, our buddy Steve, formerly of this podcast, released a game.
Thank God
called Tacoma.
Thank God Steve's not involved in this anymore.
Wow.
No, I ruined it. God, let's just start that over again. Sorry. We're like aggressively low energy, and I shat on it. So,
anyway, speaking of games that currently exist that you can play now, our buddy Steve, formerly of this podcast, former Thumb. Well, I guess he's a Thumb forever.
Formerly of this podcast, always an Idle Thumb.
True.
It's like being an
Scoops
Eagle Scout
forever.
or president or something.
Yeah.
Sadly true. Anyway, he released a video game a while ago at this point. I mean, like
Yeah.
a month and a half ago by the time you hear this.
But Tacoma came out.
Tacoma.
Steve left the Idle Thumbs podcast to pursue his dream of making Gone Home.
Yeah.
And then he left Gone Home to pursue his dream of making Tacoma.
True.
And that day has come. Steve's
Yeah.
dream has been realized.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think have we all played through Tacoma?
Yes.
Yeah. I assumed as such. Yes. It's not that. I mean, it's like most of these games, like Gone Home, Firewatch, etc. In that you can play.
And that they're not games.
I played through it in a single setting. Two sittings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, 2.
But it's nice. It's nice to be able to. Actually, I played through 2 speculative future science fiction games in one sitting this week. So I guess we can talk about the other one.
Oh, yeah,
after
right.
Because Nick, I know you played at least half of it or so. But yeah, Tacoma. Tacoma is a story-based kind of.
It's like first-person exploration game.
Yeah. Basically, it's a first-person story exploration game in which you are sent to a space station in order to investigate. Really to just perform a specific task that you're given, but really what you end up doing as the player is to investigate what happened to the crew while you retrieve the kind of hardware of this incredibly important and valuable AI that ran the station before a catastrophic event occurred.
Yeah, you're sent there in the sort of mold of blue-collar sci-fi worker guy, or in this case, gal, who's your job. You're supposed to sit there, plug a tablet into a wall, and wait for it. But since it's a video game and you are a video game protagonist, you're
going to look at everything and
pick
root into people's stuff.
Yeah.
Mess with everything.
And the thing that my favorite thing about Tacoma is probably a lot of people's favorite thing, because it really is the sort of central big bullet point new feature of the game, is the augmented reality video log system by which you can see the crew, the now vacant crew, move around the station, have conversations with each other, and you can in sort of ghostly rendered wireframe kind of fully animated scenes. But unlike a traditional cutscene, you can walk around inside them while this is happening, and you can scrub back and forth along the timeline. And some of these are really long. I mean, some of them are 6 minutes long or something. I don't know how long they get, but some of them are quite long, and they involve different crew members walking all throughout the station and sort of intersecting paths and meeting and sharing an exchange and walking away. And the thing I like so much about it is it feels like one of a very rare example of genuine innovation in what is essentially audio logs. It is serving the same purpose that audio logs did in, for instance, System Shock 2, which I feel like was kind of the game that started the modern trend of audio log based storytelling in immersive first person games. Obviously BioShock was the one that really brought it to the forefront, but BioShock itself was a game by the makers of System Shock 2. So and also what's funny is System Shock 2 also had this kind of ghostly imagery of the characters, now gone characters, and so Tacoma I feel like really shares some DNA with that game's method, but by adding this ability to directly interact with the timeline by scrubbing back and forth within it, it really feels like a new take on it. I mean, I know there have been other games, I mentioned this on Twitter a few weeks ago, and some people pointed out some other recent games like The Division that did similar stuff to this, but I think the way that Tacoma handles the scrubbing specifically and the integration of it into the world is just really cool.
It's really nice.
It gives it a forensic investigatory feel.
Well, because you can also hack people's desktops within that as well.
Inside of the sort of holographic logs that are playing. Yeah, if someone else brings up an AR desktop, you can click on it and sort of scour what they were looking at that moment in time. It ends up like mechanically, it doesn't pay off in the same way as Her Story, but it gave me some of the same feelings of Her Story.
You mean the Sam Barlow game, Her Story?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
when
game.
you first said that, I thought you were referring to.
I mean, capital H, capital S, Her Story.
Yeah.
Which is that desktop simulator where you're just looking through hours and hours and hours of video clips of interviews about a crime.
Yeah.
But just that feeling of there's potentially so much stuff here that it's only the clip is only, it could be 3 minutes long of this video, sort of this like AR log, but it could take you 10 plus minutes just to go through and follow each of the characters back as they walk in and out of the room and look at their desktops and stuff. And even then, only a couple of details inside of it will end up being like plot relevant, but just that feeling of really dense content packed into a tiny bubble that your job is to sort of like pull apart and look through feels really nice.
Yep. Yeah, I think one of the things that games of this type have to contend with, and I say this as someone who works on games in this sort of loose genre. I mean, games in the genre are very different to one another, but like I think one of the common elements is that without sort of traditional adventure gamey puzzles, really a lot of what you're doing is kind of just like absorbing a lot of content and coming up with novel and worthwhile ways to absorb that content is pretty difficult and often can't really be repeated from game to game because frequently it is very contingent on the specifics of the story being told and the world it's being told in and like all these other factors, right? I mean, like and I think a cool thing about Tacoma is where they drew the line between the elements of this system that are natural to the world being depicted, which are like, oh, it's AR, and there's these sort of wireframe people. They're more than wireframes. They're actually like modeled, but they have that translucency of wireframes. These people walking around in the world, and the idea is that you are sort of seeing these through some kind of, I don't know, like retinal implant, or I don't remember what exactly the...
I think it's the computer's like playing it back.
Yeah, I think at the very beginning of the game, you sort of put two things on your ears that imply that there's like a Google Glass style overlay on your face.
Totally. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's how you're seeing it. But then on top of it, there's like UI elements with a little kind of timeline on the bottom of the screen and little icons that point out like, oh, this is at 2 minutes and 57 seconds in the timeline. You can see coming up there's a little like question mark icon that means, or I forget exactly what the imagery is, but it's like, oh, okay, I know because I've done this before that this means there's going to be a computer desktop that opens up and that I can hack into and like get information, and I can see it coming up on the timeline. And I feel like one of the tempting things to do in this kind of system would be to have it be 100% like in-world, so to speak, where those sort of video game UI conveniences are downplayed, but they really just decided to make that system a very user-friendly video game UI that, like, I don't know, maybe that stuff is all justified fictionally, I don't really know, but it felt to me just like a really good, nice, usable video game UI, and I feel like deciding when to maintain fidelity to like the really specifically sold in-world fictional elements and when to just say like we're going to make this usable as a video game to the player is like a really important thing to decide.
You can definitely imagine a version of this. I mean, like the effect of it is kind of akin to something like Sleep No More, where you're kind of moving from room to room and like characters will just split off and you've got to follow them into this room or whatever. But like, you can definitely imagine a version of this where it just plays out and then maybe just replays automatically or just goes away forever.
And other games that are that do stuff like this, that is a thing.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I
think
smart.
This is allowed. This is like, I think we're allowed to say this because I think Steve has said it publicly. But earlier in the development of Tacoma, it was more like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they showed a demo.
Okay, that's right.
That was before they had the playback scrubbing. Yeah, they definitely. I felt like it was meant to be built into the same sort of AR desktop that your character has that everyone else has, and it's. But so they tied it into a fictional contrivance built into this game to sort of justify that UI. But I feel like now that they've done that and bridged that gap, I hope that people feel comfortable doing an approach like this, but just not even worrying about building a huge fictional construct around it. I mean, like thinking about The Last Express.
Yeah.
Which lets you lets you rewind time. Jordan
Globally for the whole world.
Jordan Mechner's later game, The Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, your character has a dagger that lets you reverse time, and it's got a bunch of huge in-world fiction. But The Last Express was like, in the menu there's just a Fabergé egg that you can press a button on and it rewinds the world.
There's no suggestion that your character is a fucking time wizard.
And like the Tacoma navigation, like time navigation AR log stuff feels so good that it makes me think it would hold up. Yeah. Without needing the fictional construct of your character has holographic manipulation.
I think you're right to some degree.
You'd have to still couch it a little bit.
Yeah, you needed some at least thematic construction that makes it feel like
of course.
Yeah, like maybe if you don't have as much of the technology underpinnings, you at least are like, oh, your character is a detective.
Right,
and you
or it's a game about regret or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you're constantly replaying these things in your head, and that's how it's kind of like expressed in the game, right? Or you're like your character is, it's like a genre thing, and you're like a fucking amazing forensic. You're like a Sherlock Holmes, and you sort of are seeing these things through your mind's eye.
Or literally a person who sits there and obsesses over how a previous conversation went, and
going me fucking crazy as if you could replay things and there were different line reads in it, like in the conversation.
Oh, the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, that would be fucking cool. Because like we recorded an episode of the Twin Peaks Rewatch podcast in which there is a line that was replayed from Fire Walk with Me, which is a movie that came out 25 years ago, and they've hired for the replay of that line in this episode that came out a couple weeks ago. They hired a different voice actor to like imitate that character's voice and record it basically identically except for changing one word, which is not something that you would notice just like watching it through, but it's like a very interesting and specific choice. And imagining that kind of being applied to a game where you are sort of scrubbing through stuff and then there's something different, but the game doesn't surface that.
Right, if it's sort of, introducing elements of subjectivity or the infallibility of memory, or the fallibility, of memory. Yeah.
You know what's really cool about that too is if the game sort of tells you, like, you can replay this stuff as much as you want, but then there's one, like, difference that happens one time and you can never get that one back. Like, it's an interesting way to sort of, like, maintain... Because once in a mechanic where you declare to the player, like, you always can go back and see the thing, you still like it would be interesting to sort of maintain one element of that authorial subversion to be able to say but like
right. Or if you could have things that could drift out of the recordings until another character reminded you that they were there, and then they would come back or something. I don't know,
and maybe come back differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe they come back wrong.
Now I just want to like. I just want to fuck around with this.
Steve, give us all of the code to Tacoma, please. Thanks.
Anyway.
Yeah, that stuff in Tacoma is very cool.
Yep.
Find more information about Tacoma at ta.co.ma, I think is his website.
Yeah, if you're wondering if Steve came from this stupid podcast, look at all of the domain names for everything he ever fucking works on. Yeah. His company's domain name is Fulbright.
It's so complicated.
It's Fulbright, but it's at fullbrig.ht.
Oh man,
stupid.
So I didn't even realize that.
He loves it. He's wrong. His love is misplaced and bad.
Yeah. It's impossible to say any of them.
Yeah.
Is it ta.co.ma?
It is. It's Tacoma.
It is. Actually, what's absurd is when you go to ta.co.ma, it instantly resolves to tacoma.game. So like it's just two different dumb URLs that point to each other.
Just dumb.
Yeah. Anyway, buy it on itch.io.
Or buy it on Steam Powered.
Yeah, or Steam Powered. Steampowered.com.
Nothing's good.
Nope, everything's bad. Do you think the Xbox One X, X1X, Box X, 1X will have backwards compatibility with Tacoma? Oh, I guess it will, because it's just an upgraded version of the Xbox
Tacoma's
One.
on that.
Definitely buy Tacoma on the Xbox One X, Box One X box. More information at ta.co.ma.
This Xbox One X box, parentheses, quantity 1, is empty. It is just an Xbox One Xbox box.
Please do not buy this thinking you will receive an Xbox One X box X1X box. It is only the box. Read the description.
The Xbox... Oh my God, the Xbox One X turns out is actually really sick. But
Yeah.
so make sure that you buy the actual Xbox One X and not an Xbox One Xbox.
Yeah.
Parentheses
Don't,
one.
Yeah, don't get fucking hoisted on eBay when you buy your Xbox One Xbox.
No.
Yeah. When does that come out? I don't even know.
I should know when it comes out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is a ridiculous computer.
Computers are ridiculous, generally.
It's true.
All right. What do we want to talk about? What else have we played? Oh, I guess we can talk about the other.
Yeah,
ones.
let's finish
I
Idle
guess we
Thumb's
should,
speculative fiction minute by
Yeah.
talking about Mike Bithell.
Yeah. Nick, why don't you set this up?
Mike Bithell, the developer of what Thomas Was Alone
And Volume.
Volume.
Yeah.
I guess he's now doing a series of short games
With like his
with-
studio, I guess. I
yeah,
don't really know what the sort of
yeah.
structure of his deal
Yeah,
is.
Bithell
but
Games or
the credits
something
have a
along
bunch
those
of
lines.
people
Yeah, it's
in it.
it's definitely not just him
Yeah.
himself, but
Is this because Volume? See, Volume. I follow him on Twitter, and it seemed like Volume was
It did not seem like it did its numbers.
It seemed like it took a long time.
Mm.
Like it seemed like he had expected
see.
that game to not be big, and it was
Yeah.
big. But yeah, who knows?
yeah.
Oh, it was big?
In terms
Oh,
of
you just mean to make.
production,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, it
yeah,
seemed like
yeah.
he went from Thomas is Alone to a thing that ended up being surprisingly ambitious, and probably,
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't know how successful it was.
I have no
but
idea what the financial situation of
Yeah.
the game ended up being. It's not my business, but it seemed like it didn't.
It
I
didn't
just
blow
say
up
this
the way
from
Thomas
his
was
own
Alone.
public statements.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
insider knowledge here.
Yeah, but either way, it seems like he's just this is a
Making
concerted
small
effort to just
stuff?
make small stuff
That's
and,
cool.
and ship it and
Yeah.
be. I think it's explicitly I think in the opening of the game, it just says this is meant to be experimental or something along those lines. But yeah, it's called what Subsurface Circular. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a narrative game that takes place in a world, I guess, that is. I mean, humans exist in this world, but now we have like AI that sort of has developed its own personality or different personalities.
I mean, it's
And
basically it seems like
the world we're headed to, Chris.
It is the world we're headed to in the sense that like part of the fiction of the world. I don't know how far. I know you didn't complete the game, Nick. I forget how
I'm
far
like
in.
2/3 of the way in.
Oh,
I
okay,
think.
okay. So
it's
I
very
mean,
short.
like part of the fiction of this world is that human jobs have been almost entirely supplanted by various sort of archetypes of robot laborers.
Yeah, who all work for management.
Right.
And you're a robot detective.
Yeah.
Whose job it is, I guess, is to solve problems
Right.
that go on in the society of robots. And you're riding the entire game takes place on. Well, I haven't played to the end, but presumably the entire game takes place on a subway car that you're just sitting in. Which your detective never leaves, I guess is the conceit. I think he mentions at some point.
I can't tell. I couldn't quite
I think
tell.
he said like I never leave the underground. I'm just always here solving crimes.
I can't remember, but I think that might be right. Yeah.
And
I
you
approve
just
of that.
yeah,
It's a way to justify
it's funny.
having a game that takes place 100% in one scene.
Yeah, I liked some of that, but so yeah, you just sit.
Oh, I thought it worked. I was sort of skeptical
Yeah.
at the beginning, but by the end of it, I was like, okay, I totally get it.
Yeah, no,
This works.
I think the different characters kind of sell it, but so you sit there and you've got a little UI in the bottom left corner that says what stop you're on. You can open up the subway map, which is kind of nice and kind of just shows you kind of like, I guess linearly this game sort of progresses stop by stop. Like you can kind of tell as you complete conversations with the characters that come onto the train that it kicks it to the next stop. It's a nice way to kind of like mark time. But you just talk to the robots that come onto the train, and that's the whole game. Is kind of. I mean, there's a plot that involves sort of various disturbances that are occurring and missing people and missing
It's
robots.
it's almost a classic like noir detective story in that your case is like given to you by a distressed, in this case,
Yes.
robot who sort of comes in and says, "Look, you have to help me. My friend
Right.
disappeared," and that's the instigating event. But the way you investigate is just by sitting in your seat as other robots get on and off this train.
yeah.
That's honestly the meat of most old, like hardboiled detective novels. Anyway, other than the fact that they travel, they're not stuck on a train; they're wandering to different
but they're
small
just
rooms
talking-
and then
they're just
occasionally
yeah.
getting beat up.
Yeah.
but in this one, you don't get beat up; you just do
Yeah.
the part where you talk to various people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess basically the way this game works is you'll talk to somebody, dig deeper into a conversation. At a certain point, they'll tell you something like, I heard the humans are upset. And then that unlocks like a keyword that you can then use to expose
basically a
more
lead.
dialogue options.
And
It's
then
a lead, yeah.
Once each of those leads can then be used in conversation with any other robot.
Right.
So that's,
And you can-
that almost is like insult sword fighting in Monkey Island.
Yeah,
where
a
if
little bit.
someone
Yeah.
if someone ever tells
Or
you an
like-
insult for the first time, you can then use it on everyone
Yep.
to see if they know the
Right.
response.
Or
Yep.
more accurate, like a slightly closer and way more obscure comparison would be Discworld Noir.
Oh yeah, Discworld Noir is the detective
Like that
notebook.
game.
Okay,
The
yeah.
idea in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
a ridiculous poll. But
Yeah, and yeah, it's I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I think it is very short. I mean, I could have just straight up completed
I think
it. I
I
just kind of
played
had
it
to
in
run
like
out of the
3
apartment. But
3 hours maybe.
yeah, but it's nice. I mean, it's like they
Maybe
you
less.
know I feel like the presentation of this game for being just a short interactive game
It's
is
good.
really
It's weird to play. I mean, it's having made some small like mid-scale games, right? Like sort of indie games, but at the scale of like 10 people, like 5 to 10 people, I guess, as opposed to like 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
You can really see why this game has the scope it does,
Yeah.
which is like it's really super duper high fidelity, but only one scene.
Yep.
And like there's lots of animation, but on non-human characters. And it's like, okay, I see how all this stuff. It's like if you have a full-time animator
No voice
and a full-time modeler, it's like, well, they can do I mean, nothing is stopping them from making any one asset like incredibly like shiny and nice and detailed, but they're just not going to have the bandwidth to make like a whole world full of stuff, right? There's like sort of a minimum like output you have once you have someone who's just there. Like once you have the person, it's like, well, they can make it look amazing now. Like in 2017, one person can make materials and models that look incredible.
Yep.
They just can't make a ton of them.
But they just can't make a ton of them.
I mean, they got a lot of mileage out of things like just changing the color palette, right? Well,
Exactly.
when you stop
and like the head and
like the colors of all the robots that happen to get on then are sort of more in like, purples, and then the lighting changes, and it's kind of like this room. Like it's just like, oh yeah, okay, now we're in a different mood, and like this is going to suit what the narrative is doing right now. It's I don't know. There was some smart like
like the lighting in our podcast studio, which we YouTube viewers will see that the lighting subtly changes to fit the story we're telling in this week's podcast episode.
Right. Yeah. But Chris, you played it all the way through. I know you said that the ending kind of, without spoiling anything, I know you said the ending kind of puts a different light on
that's
it.
That's not really what I mean. Well, I mean, it does just in the sense that it's a story, and the ending of a story always affects the story.
Sure.
But it's not so much that. It's
more
more that.
Impression.
Yeah, it's more that because this game is fairly short and because the scope is fairly constrained, I feel like completing it does actually feel like necessary to sort of be able to come up with an overall conclusion or
take
thought
on it,
which one could, and some people definitely do make that argument that you would say that about any video game. But there are definitely some, in my strongly held opinion, there are definitely some video games where it's like, okay,
I mean,
this is dozens of hours long, and after a certain number of hours, I
get it.
I really get it.
This is a short story. Would you be like stopping in the middle of a short story and saying like, I didn't like it or I loved it? It's sort of silly, but yeah.
I mean, there's not really any fiction comparisons. Are hard to make with this at all, right? Because even with a novel, you couldn't stop halfway through a novel and say, I get it, because a novel isn't a system, right? A novel is like a series of individually written sentences, and games include elements of that. Some games more so than others, but much of what a game is a system, right? Like Tacoma is different than like Skyrim, and you can have different opinions about them based on the amounts of hours of them you've played, and like one of those makes more sense to have an opinion after 20 hours not having completed it,
right,
versus 3 hours having completed the other. Anyway, whatever. I think this game was worth playing. It's like $5. It's $4.99 or whatever. It's on Steam, maybe other places, and it's I would say that if you based on what we've said about it, I feel like you should probably have a decent sense of whether you will feel like it is worth $5. Like it takes place in one location. It is just dialogue. That is all you're doing the whole game. That like it's very specific and constrained scope. And I feel like if you know that, and you are not, that is not going to like make you feel like you've been cheated out of your $5 or something, then it's great. I mean, like I think it's cool. I think it's an interesting, worthwhile experiment, and I hope it does well for them.
Yep.
It's another case where, like I was saying about Tacoma, it's another case where for games like this, and this is very different than Tacoma in that you aren't walking around at all.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's sort of similar in that it's a basically linear story that you experience through dialogue. It's just a different, in this case, you're participating in the dialogue, whereas in Tacoma, you're observing the dialogue. And the way that it is executed is just kind of specific to this game and like this setting, and it's interesting.
Yeah,
I get the sense that I have like sort of just that intuitive sense that if you play through it, things could happen differently depending on how you play through it. But I'm not certain that's the case.
So I read, briefly, I read a review that mentioned that oh my God.
Jake had the lights on.
So now I got to get really excited about this.
Right.
Man, video games, yeah.
Read a sick review.
Just a sick review. I got my daily dose of video game reviews.
Rent it.
Yeah, buy it.
One of those.
Yeah, one of the two.
What are those? Ratings.
Anyway, so I read a review of it. My understanding of it is that it sort of implies choice, but doesn't actually offer it until the end.
That totally,
the end is apparently a sort of like
right. There is
yeah.
That makes sense. I totally buy that. One of the things I was wondering when playing this game, and I remember wondering the same thing about Tacoma when I first played a playtest build of it. Like in Tacoma, there's this mechanic where you have to download the AI you're sent to receive to sort of a tablet, and there's a percentage bar that ticks up as you're doing it. And I was like sitting there trying to reverse engineer how it works. And I think I was, my supposition was, I think, proven to be correct, except for a thing that I did not anticipate, which is that if you simply sit there and let the game run without doing anything, the percentage bar will complete. So you can conceivably finish that game and see almost nothing by just waiting a total of like many hours.
You can literally do the job that you're ostensibly set out there to do,
right?
And it takes the amount of time that it would.
Yeah, which is very funny. And when I was playing Subsurface Circular, I was kind of wondering the same thing because there's this implied tension of
will you get to the next subway stop?
Right, because when you do, robots get on and off the train, and then once they leave, you can no longer talk to them.
Right.
And it does seem like there is there's definitely a certain amount of content that you could conceivably never see if you just hit all of the critical path stuff and then not any of the optional stuff, and then switch what robot you're talking to. It will sort of move it on to the next station. But that's not really branching or choice in any meaningful way. It's just kind of how much of the content
you choose to engage with,
you see, right? And I was imagining sort of a version of this in which there is sort of simultaneously a timer going on.
More like adding a Last Express element into it, actually.
Yeah, or actually what Tacoma really is, which is a real timer, but you can short circuit the timer by actually doing the content.
If you eat all of it, Tacoma doesn't make you wait for the download.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you sit around forever, the timer is still going. In Tacoma, that's a safe thing to happen because the timer being complete doesn't actually turn off any of the content until you choose to progress in the game.
Right.
Whereas in this game, if the timer actually completed, you would in fact
they'd be like, "Oh, sorry, this is my stop. I have to go."
But it made me kind of interested in the alternate reality version of this game, in which that is just the attitude they took and they just designed around that. And I don't know what that would mean exactly. It would be a sort of that kind of design choice with a linear narrative game is very, very difficult.
It makes your game real hard suddenly.
It really makes it hard to make
because
it's hard to make and then weird to play because you don't necessarily know you're subject to these things as a player.
Yeah,
but it is an interesting sort of design.
I mean,
space.
I feel like 80 Days did a decent workaround on that, where the timer's always running when you're in a town, but when you engage with a story element, it stops. And I feel like that's a decent way to handle that, where there are mechanics.
I actually thought when I was playing Subsurface Circular for until I
mean, it pauses, but it does elapse a chunk of time for that conversation, right? So while you're enjoying the content, you're not worrying about oh fuck, I got to get through this thing.
That's how I thought it worked, but in reality, I don't think there is really a real timer. There's just the sort of fake narrative timer, which is fine. It totally makes sense for what the game is, but it did make my kind of gears spin about what could this, what alternate version of this could you make?
Yeah.
And I think to do that, you just have to be willing to throw away a lot of content, and that's what 80 Days does, right? 80 Days doesn't really matter whether you see any one piece of content. It's all kind of individually disposable, and then the value is how it is strung together for
Right.
you. Whereas in a game like this, there really is a clear central
if you could
narrative
switch
that everyone's gonna
trains
have.
and the story branched to that extent in this game, then it would
Sure.
be more along those
Sure,
lines.
yeah.
but
You could design. Yeah, you could
You
just
could design it and just be, like, way
the
more
finite
ambitious.
branching version of it. It would
Yeah.
just be a lot more content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the game is Subsurface Circular, and it's like $5 on Steam. You can play it in a few hours.
Nice.
take
Break
a
time.
break.
Break time.
This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest, fastest, most user-friendly, customer-supported way to make your very own website, portfolio, blog, or online store. And if you go to squarespace.com, you can start a free trial, build your whole website without needing to pay for anything, and get it all figured out, make sure that it's how you like it. And then when you are ready to check out, use that offer code THUMBS for 10% off. You can get your domain name, you can build the whole website, you have 24/7 customer support. It's all of the pieces in one place to make your entire website. And this is just a funny thing that I happened to notice the other day. I've become really into this YouTube channel that Sean recommended to me called Binging with Babish. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
It's a guy who makes cooking videos based on like fictional, the food from fiction, like TV.
This is
film.
why you found that cocktail that you talked about on Twin Peaks Rewatch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a different channel, but it's
That guy was
indirectly.
They
how
did
I
a
found-
crossover for that one drink. Anyway.
Anyway, there's a video game. The one that he sent me originally was Zelda Breath of the Wild cooking video. Anyway, his website is made of Squarespace. I found out,
Nice.
and I'm on his website. It's great. Anyway, Squarespace. You just build whatever website, even if it's like a professional thing, and you put all your stuff on
Just
it.
do it.
Yeah, you go to squarespace.com and use the offer code THUMBS when you're ready to check out. But even before you're ready to check out, you can build your whole site with your free trial. 10% off with the offer code THUMBS when you're ready. Squarespace.com. It's got everything you need. Thanks, Squarespace. This episode of Idle Thumbs is also brought to you by ProFlowers, the most professional way to send flowers. I mean, I shouldn't misconstrue ProFlowers there. It's a very easy and nice and like also casual and fun way to send flowers.
Yeah.
But I would say they take their side of it very professionally.
Yes.
And seriously. So you don't have to. You just like click some buttons on a website and then flowers show up at someone's home and they're beautiful. And if you go to proflowers.com and use the code THUMBS at checkout, you can get 20% off rainbow roses or any other amazing pro bouquet of $29 or more. Proflowers.com with the offer code THUMBS for that. I know we've all had some pro flowers in our lives recently.
Oh, yeah,
Those rainbow roses.
We've had lovely houses with lovely flowers in them. I mean, not houses. None of us own a house.
Yeah, please.
Oh, come on.
Please. To console yourself by knowing you will never own a house.
Right.
And will just
As a millennial-
rent an apartment unit forever.
Yeah.
Why not freshen it up with some flowers?
Well, save 20% and then take that 20% and put it in a fund.
Yeah.
And then
don't spend that extra 20%
6,000
on
years
avocados
from now, you can
or
afford a
whatever.
house.
You
Yeah.
piece of
Yeah,
shit,
exactly.
irresponsible jackass millennial.
Right.
Just save money on flowers and buy a house with the money you have left.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so easy.
Just put $1 in the bank.
Don't spend an extra 20% on flowers, jackass.
Put that
Buy
in
a
a
house
fucking
with
house,
it.
kid.
and then fill that house with flowers.
Yeah.
Because once you have a house, you have equity. You're making money off that fucker, and
Yeah.
use that to buy even more flowers until you are dead.
Buy 20% more
And then you
flowers
can buy
than
flowers. You got flowers for your funeral.
A
You're good. You're
million
good.
flowers.
All those flowers already.
would. Yeah. God.
Why haven't people fucking figured
Why
this out?
haven't they just been doing this?
I don't know.
Just go to proflowers.com and use the offer code THUMBS at checkout to save 20% off your order of $29 or more. And then all this other stuff that we just said.
You'll own a house.
You'll own a house. You'll be full of flowers. You can't even move in it because there's so many flowers. You'll have no avocados at all, ever, please.
ProFlowers.
Proflowers.com with the offer code THUMBS.
House not guaranteed.
Oh yeah, multiple people inside of Campo have confirmed that those sugar-free gummy bears just make you shit your pants uncontrollably.
Say that again.
Multiple people in Campo have confirmed that the sugar-free
Christ.
gummy bears make you shit your pants forever.
Jesus.
Yeah, Erin was working at Speakeasy for a while in the first incarnation of it, and she was training to do one of the roles. Then someone went, "You're gonna have to fill in for this other person." She's like, "I don't know that person's part." Like, well, you're gonna have to cram because they ate a ton of sugar-free gummy bears and are just at home shitting their brains out. No. So yeah, Erin had to sit during a different performance, just in the back, like cramming the script for a different character.
Yeah.
And then Ben also said that he had a friend staying at his house who just was in the bathroom the entire time just pooping. So we should order those as a little prank. That's our new YouTube video series. Every day we eat a bag of sugar-free gummy bears.
That is, I mean...
Yeah, while discussing Twin Peaks: The Return.
Shake it, those gummy bears.
I ate the ones that make you cough uncontrollably while you shit.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Mom wouldn't like that.
Not for moms. What? Hey, kids.
What if while you were playing a video game, you just kept eating those? And then by the end, you were just like shitting your pants? Like crazy?
I'm sitting in my tactical gamer chair. I'll lose weight while gaming. Oh, if you rebrand those so they all have like, VR headsets or sort of like Google Glass cyberpunk stuff on the box, it's just like, cyber bears, and you sell them to gamers to eat them and then poop.
Sounds good.
Chris, there's money in this. Is that it? Are we back?
Yeah. Well, I guess. What are we talking about?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, right. Oh, shit. We're back. What are we talking about?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, shit.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh.
We're in our manic phase of Sonic Mania.
Yeah.
God, I played some Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania does imply that there's also like a real sort of down time for Sonic.
Sonic depression.
I guess that was the last 15 years of Sonic the Hedgehog games.
Sonic depression sounds like a geological event. You know what I mean? It sounds like
Sonic depression actually
the
featured
Concorde takes off and
leaves a
the
Sonic depression.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like sort of ground cavities. I was gonna say Sonic depression features in Bungie's popular Myth series, like deformable terrain joke. Get it?
Yeah.
Anyway, Sonic Mania. I played a lot of Sonic Mania.
Yeah.
It's a new Sonic the Hedgehog game.
I actually don't know anything about this.
So, Chris, they've made another Sonic game.
Okay, that in itself is not remarkable.
It's not remarkable, and it's usually sort of just depressing or not
it's
even.
Usually Sonic depression.
It is, yes. Sonic Mania is a 2D Sonic game. It's pixel art Sonic game. It's very much in the style of the Sega Genesis games. Yes, it's.
For what system? Switch, I guess.
All systems. The PC version is a little bit delayed, but it's on Switch, Xbox, PS4. Sega made the interesting choice with Sonic Mania of basically, instead of repeatedly shutting down and shunning fan modders and Sonic hackers and Sonic hackers is an amazing
Sonic
phrase.
Hackers.
They've employed a really notable person who started off doing like Sonic CD ROM hacks and extensions of that game.
Oh my god!
And then also people who've been making fan games and fan mods to old Sonic games.
I've seen some of those mods.
Yeah, so there's the lead programmer whose name is failing at my job here of being an informed man. Christian Whitehead is the lead programmer and was the lead developer, and then there's also two other teams on the project. Known as Headcanon and Pagoda West Games.
What? Headcanon?
Yes.
Amazing.
So, Sega said you have the power to make and ship a totally blessed Sonic the Hedgehog game. And
#blessed.
Yeah. And I think that it was the right choice because I've not played a Sonic game that I liked in a long time. I had admittedly skipped some that just got objectively panned, but like... Maybe the Sonic Advance games on GBA. I really liked those.
That was the last. That was basically the last time they said we're going back to. Oh no,
they did one called Sonic the Hedgehog 4. I think they tried to do the Mega Man 3 thing. People weren't really into that. Yeah. They also tried to do a sort of 3D. I think they tried to do their version of Mario Galaxy with a game that was just called Sonic the Hedgehog. That was supposed to be a 3D one, but it was aggressively over designed and overthought. This game...
So you've been playing this on Switch, I assume?
I've been playing it on Switch, which is fantastic. Playing that on a...
The screenshots look really nice.
Yes. So the thing that I didn't do a lot of reading on Sonic Mania other than just saw people say, oh, it's good, it's worth playing. Admittedly, so it's still a Sonic game. So if you didn't like Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, or 3, or Sonic and Knuckles, etc., you probably won't like Sonic Mania.
Well, sure, but then what do you like? What do you like about Sonic if you don't like those?
Right. Well, I mean, there's people who like a lot of platformers, but Sonic the Hedgehog is kind of a sloppy mess mechanically, all things considered.
Yeah, it totally is.
Like, it works.
Totally is.
It somehow works in the earlier Sonic games, but
it works in spite of itself. It's really weird.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's like a case where the conceit is so strong that it just like totally counterbalances all of the incredibly significant problems with that design.
Yes.
That as a kid I was not really conscious of, but now when you play those games you're like, man, this is bad in a lot of ways.
You're supposed to go fast, but also to win you have to go slow, but
you
also
constantly slam into it's like you're supposed to go fast, but like you spend a lot of time like gingerly unless you're amazing at it, but you can't get amazing at it without playing it a shitload to begin with.
The best way to play a Sonic game seems to be to kind of just get over all of those things and enter a weird sort of state where you're like, my job is just to explore this space and be surprised by the weird things that are going to happen to me inside of this, and sort of, you'll say, man, as long as I kind of am heading generally from left to right, I'll sort of intuit my way through this level, and I have no idea how I did it, but I'll get to the end.
One thing that I think is totally amazing about those games, and I can't decide if it's good or bad, but I think it's just good. I mean, like it's one of those cases where it might sort of be flawed in a lot of senses, but I think the total effect is great, is how fucked up and weird the level design in those games is.
Yes. So that's the thing. The thing that I didn't know about Sonic Mania is, I was about to say, sorry. Sonic Mania, I thought that it was going to just be, we are making a bunch of new Sonic the Hedgehog levels, new sort of new zones, new themes, new art. The way that it starts, though, is you're in what looks like just yet another take on, you're in sort of a green, lush area, but it's a new presentation. It's yet another Sonic game that opens up with another variant of Green Hill Zone or whatever. Sonic meets up with with Dr. Eggman.
I think let's just call him what he is, Dr. Robotnik.
Sure, he's Eggman in this.
I'm an American, goddammit.
But there's no actual story or meaning behind this, but Robotnik presses a little weird remote control at Sonic, and the world starts inverting and a whole bunch of crazy effects happen, and then you wake up in Green Hill Zone from either Sonic 1 or Sonic 2. I think it's
weird.
I think it's level 1 of Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Okay.
And you literally just play through that. It's like the sprite art is a little bit punched up in places. Sonic has a couple of additional moves, and it's running on new code. That plays basically the same, except there's a surprise strange boss encounter at the beginning or at the end of that instead of you just running through. And then you get
Super Metroid style?
Just Sonic the Hedgehog style.
Sure.
There's just a strange, weird Sonic mini-boss. And then you get to Green Hill Zone Act 2, and it's just a completely different level. And it's just, they said, it's like, okay, here is the original one, and now this team of crazy, just Sonic aficionados, like, okay, and now we will do level 2, which is our love letter to the Green Hill Zone version of Sonic the Hedgehog. But, like, everything is like 20 to 80% more sort of like the flow is more interesting, and like the different sort of small mechanics that they've added into the levels to mix up like the types of shoots that you get in or the little devices that you get in, or there's other strange conceits, are just it's a new level that you don't expect. And then the boss fight at the end of Green Hill Zone Act 2, I'm only going to spoil a little bit of the beginning of this game, but it's the only way that I can figure out how to explain this, is just literally the end boss from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 just shows up.
Yeah.
Then you get zapped with the TV remote again, and you're in Chemical Plant Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and it's just Chemical Plant Zone Act 1. Like one of the most notorious, like emotionally notorious Sonic the Hedgehog levels, because it's the one with the pit of pink water that you have to jump out of as all the blocks are spinning.
Yeah.
And then you complete that, fight a surprise boss battle, and get to Chemical Plant Zone Act 2, and it is like the most amazing Sonic level that I have played, probably.
Wow.
Because they said, okay, this level's called Chemical Plant Zone, and all it has ever had in it before is just that pink water and like the blue muck that kills you.
Yeah.
Or that you fall out of the level and die, I guess.
Yep.
But now there's like But that level's also the one, if you remember it, that is known for sort of you falling into the little contraptions of spinny pipes that'll whip you around into different directions. And like as a kid, you always wondered like if I lean on the directional stick, can I control which way I go? In Chemical Plant Zone 2 in Sonic Mania, there are actual switch ports that you can go into and choose which way you route. There's all these different sort of gels that you can like, if you land on what looks like a bumper, it turns out to be the top of a syringe, and it will inject the water in the level with a color that turns it sort of sticky or bouncy. Like it's just, there's all these weird glass tubes that you're swirling around in. It's fucking nuts. And then you realize if you don't want to hear any Sonic Mania spoilers, stop listening now. But this is the most amazing part of Sonic Mania to me. So they've turned Chemical Plant Zone into this place that is now actually these weird multicolored goos going all over the place, and you're just like fucking flying all over the place through lab equipment, and you get to the boss battle, and instead of it being the thing where the floor is flipping up and down and Robotnik is just dropping blue ooze on you, you get dropped into a control, like what looks like a little mech control panel device, and then it's revealed that you are one of two players playing against Robotnik in Mean Bean Machine. Which is
what?
Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine was the Sega Genesis like columns or Tetris style falling block puzzle game. So they've sort of said, okay, we've the Chemical Plant Zone, which is now full of all these weird colored goos, and you don't know what they're for. You're just making the fucking Mean Beans from Mean Bean Machine.
That's amazing.
And then you have to play him in a 2-player puzzle game, and then he gets destroyed. And all the
that's also kind of a cool, like that's also in a way sort of a I don't know, feels like a slight echo of like the casino level in which you're inside a pinball machine and stuff like that.
Yeah. The next level after this is called Studiopolis, and it is sort of their first new one, and it's a combination of like 80s talk show TV look and that casino stuff. But yeah, it just feels like, okay, you guys understand the fucking craziness that you should be experiencing in a Sonic the Hedgehog game.
This sounds like it's actually interesting, right? Instead of just being good or bad, it sounds like they actually had ideas.
Yes,
that are worth anything. I mean, it sounds like kind of what Nintendo has really spent years and years and years at this point doing with Mario.
Mario Galaxy, 3D Land and World, and the upcoming Mario Odyssey feel like sort of love letters to all of the past of Mario, and I don't think Sega has hit that correctly. They have like love letter to the past, but also looking at what those games were doing and what sort of fueled their creativity, and then extrapolating that forward at the same time, as opposed to just bathing in nostalgia or just making bland trash. Like it feels like they got the balance right for maybe the first time in a long time with a Sonic game.
That's amazing.
At least for me. I'm sure that a lot of it's been getting good reviews. I don't know what like true mega Sonic fans think about the details of it, but for me, it's sort of just a casual person who liked and still occasionally goes back and plays some of the old Sonic games and feels like they hold up. I've had a really good time with this so far. Like I'm still too shit at Sonic games to have like properly progressed through the Chaos Emerald stuff, and it seems to have you can play as Sonic or have Sonic with Tails following you, or you can play as Knuckles, and the levels also have slight branching content depending on which of those characters you play as, because they have slightly different sub abilities. I don't know anything about any of that because I've just been playing as Sonic alone. Because having Tails in the level for me always just makes me worse. I think.
Yeah, I know.
It's a disaster. But anyway, God, crashing into that Mean Bean Machine console.
That's
it's like,
cool.
oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And I knew exactly what to do. And it was the all of the bosses are actually pretty good. Like I think that's another one that feels like looking at what did Sonic the Hedgehog do. And
I actually think boss battles in Sonic the Hedgehog were amazingly, given how frequently boss battles are just dog shit in games, were actually really good relative to a lot of boss battles in games.
The boss battles in this game, I've had a couple that are just feel like just brutal assaults that are not entirely fun, but it's only been a couple of outliers in what has otherwise been just like a ton of fresh, good scenarios. Like that trend of good It's a game where every new level or every midpoint of a level, you're going to be surprised and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be usually good, sometimes great, and always interesting, which is pretty rare. And I'm enjoying that in a Sonic the Hedgehog game.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Sonic
really
Mania.
Good.
Also, it is super fun to play on a Switch, to play on a giant ass handheld screen.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of platforms, I looked it up and it comes out on PC August 29th. So actually, by the time you hear this podcast, it'll already have been out for a week on PC.
Cool.
So that's I'll just play it on Steam when it comes out. I'm excited. I would not have guessed this would have been something as interesting to me as you have made it sound.
Well, it's still maybe you might still find it like okay. It is still a Sonic the Hedgehog game
totally.
through and through. I mean, that's like if someone walks up to you and says, you should see Captain America Civil War because it's totally a conspiracy thriller. You're like, it's still a Marvel comic book movie, dude. But, so like it's working within the constructs of a Sonic game. But I think it's good.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds great. Cool.
That was my Sonic Mania. I became a manic Sonic man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither of you have played Pyre, right? Yeah. I might save that until I've played more of it, but I do want to say one thing about it because we just sort of talked about the dynamic that Sonic the Hedgehog kind of has. I feel like it just reminds me of the utter opposite of Pyre, which is that this is I think Pyre is an incredibly good game. It's the new game from Supergiant, which made Bastion and Transistor, and it's a case where the sort of like core repeating battle mechanic is not something I'm like super into personally. It's very interesting. It's this sort of 3-on-3 like basketball.
It almost feels like an arcadey sports game, right?
Yeah, it's like an
kind
NBA,
of like NBA
Jam. Yeah.
But of a weird fantasy sport that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it's a bunch of battles of this like sort of fictional fantasy sports game strung together by like a bunch of sort of overworld-based narrative stuff. And I'm like, it's not necessarily my thing, but it's a case where the quality level is so goddamn high. It is ridiculous how high quality this game is in terms of how those mechanics are executed, and just the overall level of polish in the game is like intimidatingly just off the charts. It's like hard for me to wrap my brain around how sort of polished off this game is in a way that is very appealing. And so it's a case where just the intrinsic quality of it is sort of pulling me through, even though the is kind of like just the core conceit of it is not necessarily something that would totally be my thing. And I find that is rare for me at this point to encounter. But this, Jake, as someone who makes UI, you should play. I know you played an early version of this game when we sort of
even the early version of it. I was crushed by how clean the UI of it was. Yeah,
but you should play the final version of it because the level of UI polish is, I mean, maybe higher than any, like honestly, like than any game I can think of. I mean,
that's
indie
amazing.
AAA. I mean, just the number of tiny little details just in every element of the UI. And UI is a really big part of this game, which is why one of the reasons it's so significant and adds so much to the total feel of it. It is, I mean, it's like incomprehensible to me. I mean, I didn't directly work, I've never directly worked on UI, but just having been around games being made and seeing what a pain in the ass it is to get just everything to be sort of pixel perfect, let alone like interesting and unique and good, the degree to which every corner of the screen of this game is like packed with little details that are totally seamless is it's incredible to me. Anyway, I've only played for a few hours at this point, so I probably should really cap it there until I'm deeper into it. But it does feel like I've gone through the core loop of the game a bunch of times at this point. Like I don't really expect it to drastically go off in some other direction. But it's an interesting concept that I think a lot of people would like. But then on top of that, the execution level is just insane. So anyway, that's Pyre by Supergiant.
Nice.
I wanted to call it out simply because it is. I just can't. I don't know. I don't get it. Like I don't, because they're not a big team. They're not a really big team. So it's shocking to me.
They love that polish, though. I mean, all of their games have always felt incredibly polished,
right?
Like
but they don't usually involve this much constant interaction with the UI. I guess Transistor more so. I guess they've been trending upwards in that regard.
Yeah.
It's
always felt like they've looked to studios like Blizzard or like modern fighting games though for like how clean and sort of poppy all that stuff
Blizzard,
should be.
right? When you play like
I mean, just Hearthstone is all UI.
That's what I was just going to say. If you play Hearthstone, that feels like one of the few other points of comparison. But it's kind of like it's not as impressive to me in Hearthstone. I mean, it is in terms of the actual end result. But like one, Blizzard is a massive company with way more resources, and two, that game literally is the UI. Like Hearthstone only is UI, so it sort of stands to reason. But Pyre is not just UI.
To that point, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Dota card game is that Valve announced at the International, because I love the aesthetic of Dota 2. Like, I love the Dota 2 menus and the branding and stuff. Right. I love that they have sort of the Blizzard look, but it's weirdly classy, almost to the point that it seems like a joke.
It's a bit more muted.
Yeah, it's everything is like, it's got little elements of modern, clean design in it, and I'm really excited to see what the heck a game that is just basically that aesthetic only, without there being...
When you say a card game, do you mean like a computer card game or a physical card
they
game?
announced
They've announced...
Okay, I don't know anything about
They announced a game called Artifact, a Dota 2 card game.
That's so funny that they're just doing...
featuring friend of Idle Thumbs and former host of Dota Today, Brad Muir, as one of the designers on it.
Oh, crazy. Good for Brad.
Yep.
Man, that sounds like something he would just... Like, that's got to be one of his sort of dreams. Yep. That's really cool. Good for him.
Nice.
Good for them. We got a couple emails about our ongoing PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds like observation betting.
Oh, our gambling.
Things.
Everyone told us how gambling actually works and where it is in the world.
Well, there's a couple emails. One from Holly Pickering. She says, "I'm sure other people have posted this your way. They have not, so thank you, Holly. But there is going to be a PUBG invitation event at Gamescom this year. It's all offline LAN, so that solves the streaming and cheating issue. I also think the groups are a lot smaller than 100 per game, but I can't find the exact details of that. Should be interesting to see how it all goes. In any case, all the best, Holly." And she linked to a couple links about this, and there's not...
So they're on an offline LAN, but they're going to broadcast the event to the public somehow? You'd have to, right?
Yeah, I assume so. Huh. But the players, I imagine, will be in an environment that would not allow them to stream. Yeah, so I mean...
they have just...
they got their
phone up. No, interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like the way that you'd have to do it, right? I mean,
you have to just do it as
you have to isolate
events.
The players. That's really the one thing you have to control for. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. Oh, 80. It looks like how many it is, according to the...
That's still a lot.
Chan Han Kim, the VP and executive producer of Bluehole. So anyway, awesome, cool. I'm glad to know about that. You will bet on it. I will watch that because that's cool. And then also Danielle Charles writes in, saying, "Hey there, so this is about something called Salty Bet, which I could not figure out what this was by going to the website, but Danielle says it." Salty Bet was something of a sensation around the era of Twitch plays Pokemon and runs constantly. It's based on Mugen, a freeware fighting game whose community is the source of the content. Yep. Because anyone can add anything, the playable characters could be Ken lifted straight from a Street Fighter game, a frame-by-frame rip of Vegeta, a badly drawn original character, or a single still image of Tom Hanks slapped over a pixelated body. In Salty Bet, an AI runs both players of the fighting game and chooses characters from Mugen's... is that how you say it? Mugen?
I don't know.
I'm
not sure.
Infinitely deep well of characters. Upon reaching the site, you are given some starting value of salty bucks, and your goal is to multiply your wealth through betting on the random AI brawl. The site calculates betting margins and payouts once everyone's locked in. It personally served as my introduction to Twitch years ago, and every so often someone will slap it on TV when in a party full of nerds. It's a bit of a meme bonanza, but when you and a few friends get into the site, it makes for a fun little social time waster and or drinking game. Hope you find it worth a laugh, Danielle.
Seems like a good idea.
It does seem cool, yeah.
Mugen
and
is also
I'm glad
a thing that is great.
Mugen is a cool thing.
Stupid.
Yeah.
The stupidest thing.
I'm glad that someone wrote in about this because some other people did not write in with an... They just wrote in saying literally like, it's like Salty Bet. And if you go to the website, there is absolutely zero information. Like
that's because it's part of the dark web, Chris.
Well, it's just one of those like classic internet things that's been around for years, and just its community knows what it is, and to find out what it is, you basically just have to start engaging with it, and you'll learn.
But who wants to do that?
Tell you about it. Well, I sort of watched it for a bit, but it wasn't... I couldn't discern any useful information, right? So thanks for the email. I'm glad to know about it. Let's see. Here's an email from Jamhand Tiger Soul. Which is very good. I haven't read
your daily
this
dose
proposal
of
yet,
gaming goodness.
so we'll see. This person says, "Hey Thumbs, while having a spectator view with betting certainly presents challenges, I feel you could circumvent some of these things simply by removing player names from the equation. The way I see it, the game could provide lifetime statistics for each player and assign the player a number based on their position in automatically calculated odds at the beginning of each round. For instance, a pro tier player might have odds of 1 to 2 of winning and have the best shot of winning, so their player number for that game is 1. Spectators can place bets and free roam to watch the game unfold. Granted, this isn't foolproof. Someone could just as easily be watching a stream and figure out the streamer is in the game. But to make it more difficult, much like a horse track can only accommodate one race at any given moment, it could be limited that only a single game is available for betting at any moment. Or on the flip side of that, perhaps multiple games are going on, but betting is locked out once the game begins. This way, either people trying to cheat and forced to wait until the game is their show match, which is unlikely with the number of games being played concurrently, or they are forced to sift through hundreds of games, hoping to find the one they want to cheat on and most likely being locked out of betting regardless. I can see this might take some of the fun out of betting, but this certainly could prevent or at least severely limit cheating. Teens are the worst. Alex." What if instead of numbering them, you give them randomly generated names like Jam Hand Tiger Soul?
Yeah.
Where you just assemble a bunch of like syllables into a cool sounding name.
I first encountered that style of data, like of sort of like unique ID hashing with America Online floppy disks.
What?
Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah, passwords.
When you're like, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to activate my AOL disk, and then it was just like type in the word soccer or pancake. Like, okay, I guess that's fine.
Totally. Yeah, classic.
Yeah.
When I was at Double Fine, we built a because Double Fine did a couple game Kickstarters, we built our own infrastructure on Double Fine's server for managing backers because it was able to consolidate.
Well, things like BackerKit didn't really exist when Double Fine was doing their
right,
Kickstarters.
exactly, yeah. And so
if they did, they were very new.
Yeah, so we were able to consolidate our backer databases across Kickstarter and like individual PayPal. Like we built our own infrastructure for backing via PayPal, like from our website, if the Kickstarter campaign was done and people still wanted to get into it and all this stuff. And I built that along with Paul Dubois, who's an amazing programmer, and he incorporated a really good way to deliver unique hashes to users, which was to basically do that, and it would assemble these just strings of crazy words that involved like just sort of the universe of Double Fine games and just names of people who worked at the studio and stuff. So you could just get like your unique hash for, I don't know, your like download key for Broken Age or like Master Child or something could end up being something like, Remo Brutal Toilet Agent or something. And like that would just be what you like click on that and put it into the website and get your download key. And that was like, I remember when he did that being like, there's no way, how is this secure? And it's like, well, it's using the same sort of amount of like randomness and uniqueness that anything else would. It's just using words instead of just random characters. Yep. I'm like, oh, I guess it makes sense.
That's actually what we use for the Firewatch camera website as well.
That's right.
Your Firewatch camera URL is just a string of
that's true.
Like national park names and a bunch of other stuff like that. Yeah. Inspired, of course, by Steve Case's original AOL service.
God, it was Steve Case, the founder
CEO of AOL.
I don't remember anything about that era. What it's like a weird, forgotten, like stupid.
He owns a bunch of land in Kauai, like those guys do.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
Well, some of those guys just own entire fucking Hawaiian islands.
Yeah, he wasn't all the way up to island.
Like the Oracle
owning.
guy.
Yeah.
What else do we have here?
Emails from readers.
Oh, here's an interesting thing. Eric writes, "Hey Thumbs, I was listening to your latest episode of your video game podcast.
Oh man!
And you were discussing the Friday the 13th game and spun off into wild ideas of a The Thing game.
Oh, are they going to tell us that a Thing game exists, right?
There is actually a game on Steam that has a lot of the mechanics and ideas you discussed, which is called Deceit. It's a multiplayer game with up to 6, I believe, players, and when you start, 2 of you become the infected. Both the infected know who the infected are, but the rest do not. The idea is for the healthy survivors to get to checkpoints, which are unlocked by flipping switches, which only the infected can unflip, and then run to the next part of the map. The infected's job is naturally to kill the rest. The infected can turn into a powerful monster thing to kill the survivors. Usually happens when the map turns pitch black. But to do this, they must, while in human form, drink blood bags that are scattered around the map to charge their monster ability. Only infected...
Drink blood bags to charge your monster.
Only infected can drink blood bags. There are also weapons and some tools scattered around the map, such as a tracker which you can put on other survivors to keep track of them if they're acting suspicious, a one-use scanner which can scan one person to see if they're infected, which, if one of the infected gets the scanner, can cause some interesting scenarios, and a lethal injection, which does exactly what you think it does. Non-infected players can kill each other too, but when someone gets shot down, players vote the downed person out by shooting at them, so you can't just start shooting people in order to hope to win. Infected players can only permanently kill other players without having to vote them out when they're in monster form. This is, of course, not a The Thing game, but it has a lot of the things you talked about and makes for an absolutely mind-twisting, paranoia-filled 20 minutes or so, which is usually how long a game lasts. People running around trying to figure out who's what, and the infected trying to pin stuff to the survivors. Hey, this guy drank a blood bag. He's infected. Kill him. No, I didn't. He drank the blood bag. Kill him.
Oh, classic Thing dialogue.
He drank the blood bag.
It.
It's a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend you check it out. Love your cast, and I'm working through Important If True, and I must say I enjoy it much more than I thought I would. All the best, Eric.
I'll take that. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, whatever. I'll take better than expected. That's cool. That is
D+ for Important If True.
It occurs to me, I don't actually remember if we noted this when we were talking about Friday the 13th and fictional and sort of hypothetical thing game, but this is a dynamic that actually is a really big thing in board games, in like modern, the last several years of board games, right? I mean, there's like classic stuff like like Mafia. What are the ones? What is like some of the classic just ones you don't need a set for? Yeah, like, and then there's that werewolf one.
Yeah, werewolf. Is Codenames one? Or no, what is the... Jeez, there's a bunch of games like this, though. There's a bunch of people all sitting around the table,
and there's like
card
the Battlestar Galactica game, and like,
you
know, there's all different, like, ranging all the way from games where all you have to do is talk to each other without any equipment, all the way up to like the Battlestar game, which is like a whole board with all kinds of stuff on it. Yeah, it's a really commonly... I find those games incredibly stressful. I find them really difficult to play because you have to just straight up lie to people's faces. Yeah. And I even though it's obvious, I'm aware it's like fictional and not real, but I find it really like it's one of those things that raises my heart rate and just I'm decent at it. Like
I love it.
You love it?
I really also love it.
Makes me feel alive.
Those games. What is the one with the? Do you remember the name of the one with the red cards and the blue cards and the spies and the presidents and all of that stuff?
Oh man, there's a bunch of these, and there's one that's like
that was easily my
sort of a
one.
Victorian era one. There's a bunch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could totally see. I could.
Oh. Before we go, I wanted to mention StarCraft Remastered. Really quickly.
StarCraft Remastered.
Just really, really quickly.
2 Rooms and a Boom was the game I was thinking of, and that is my favorite giant group Deceit game.
Yeah.
Also known as The Thing, the game. But what if one of them was the president?
Yeah.
Sorry,
President Thing.
Yeah.
StarCraft. Remastered.
Yeah, they remastered StarCraft, and it's out.
The original 1998 StarCraft.
The original 1998 StarCraft.
Is it actually? So what is this? Is it?
So it is the same code.
Like the same gameplay.
So this is like StarCraft HD remaster, like in the style of like we talked about the Grim Fandango one, which whatever, where it's the underlying original StarCraft is running underneath an up-resed version of StarCraft.
Yeah, with some sort of like modern like UI improvements and things like that. But the craziest thing about it is it's 4K. So
I can't even imagine.
I have never seen a 2D game to this high of like the fidelity. Like, so I would recommend people go watch, if this ever actually gets released as a video. They did a StarCraft Remastered launch event on like Day 9 TV or whatever. Yeah. And they had Tasteless and Artosis, all these like classic
guys.
It was basically, but also
casters.
Just all of their friends and like guys who haven't really played StarCraft recently, who now just have like jobs at banks and stuff. And they got them in a room, like 30 people for 2 days, and just did a like very loose tournament. But then they were just also just on the couch like telling stories about like back in the day, and it was fucking like really just, I mean, as somebody who's watched a lot of that stuff, like, well, back in the day,
sure.
it was just really comforting, but then also, like, they were really funny, and it was a fantastic stream. It was actually really entertaining, even if you don't know anything about StarCraft. But it's just crazy, because right off the bat, in the spectator mode, you have the ability to just zoom in and zoom out of the map.
Oh, that's amazing.
All the way down to just like a single unit, and it holds up perfectly.
Jeez.
And then seeing like StarCraft 1 zoomed, I mean, even like StarCraft 2, you can't zoom like all the way
really
out.
constrained, and that's an intentional like balance thing.
In
Yeah.
this,
But in
though, in
Spectators, why
StarCraft
not,
1,
right?
in StarCraft
totally.
1, you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
just zoom all the fucking way out and just see like 4 screens worth of map space
wow.
at once. Which is just for, like, if you've watched StarCraft, like, pulled in that far for 10 years, and then just suddenly you just, oh my God, you can just see, like,
That's
half the
unreal.
map.
Have you ever read? There have been a couple articles that I've read, like that sort of bubble up over the years, about the way that NFL footage is captured and locked in a vault.
Yes.
How, unless you're an actual NFL football team,
yeah.
you can't get access to the stationary cameras that show the entire field. You have to actually go to a game. But even then, you're not going to get like the perfect, crisp bird's eye view, because they don't want people to be able to, like, for strategic reasons, I think, they don't want people to be able to see full plays and full dynamics played out. StarCraft has always had that limitation, and now it doesn't, which is really interesting.
It's crazy.
That you as a spectator can actually zoom out and see a macro view of what people are doing when they're zipping all over the world.
Yeah,
That's really
I mean,
interesting.
the other thing is, they're now on the mini-map for a spectator, you see the sort of like window that the spectator is seeing, but also now you see the windows of each player.
Oh, that's really
So
cool.
you can see them bopping around and know what they're looking at, but it's not distracting
That's so
because
good.
it's just
That's so
like,
weird and
normally,
interesting.
like in StarCraft 2, they would just sort of go into like what this guy
They would
literally
cut-
sees
they would cut between
on
cameras,
his
right.
camera.
Yeah.
But now just being able to like glance at the minimap and see what they're seeing is just so much
That
cleaner.
makes so much sense. I mean, that's like what MOBAs do. Excuse me, Lord's Management games. When you're a spectator in Dota 2, you have you don't have the
don't have the mini-map
You don't
sort
have
of-
pips, but the ability to just fly all over the place and zoom in and out wildly and adjust your camera, or look at what the commentator's showing, or what all the different players are showing.
Yeah.
It's cool to see original ass StarCraft 1 with that like sort of meta layer over the top of it. That's interesting. That's really cool.
I mean, I'm really happy that Blizzard is still supporting StarCraft, because it seems like it was on this
that's
really
incredible.
like sharp downward trajectory. And then they just today, or sorry, not today, but yesterday, well, I guess 3 weeks ago when this airs, but they announced this huge overhaul of StarCraft 2. Like, it's bonkers. They are literally changing like half of the units. Like, they're basically taking feedback and just saying, all right, we're just going to fucking change it and make it better, because people were not happy with the direction of that game. They're destroying, like, they're taking some units out of the game completely. Like, it is a radical change.
Good for them.
And people who are like still plugged into it are really happy with what they're doing, which is great. Like, I still enjoy watching StarCraft matches, and I hope that it's sort of like
The way that Blizzard keeps all of their stuff alive is fascinating.
It's kind of unparalleled.
It's amazing.
I mean, honestly, I don't.
The closest is Valve, but even they're different. Valve doesn't have the gigantic legacy of Blizzard.
Yeah.
The other thing about Remastered that's so cool is that, you go into the game and it's basically just a slightly up-res version of the original StarCraft menu, and then just you go on a Battle.net, it looks like old Battle.net, but then it has the functionality of like a modern matchmaking
that's
game.
the best.
It's just, you still can join like 8-on-8 comp rush or whatever, 4-on-4 comp rush. You can, or 7-on-1, 7-on-1 like big game gubbers, big game hunters, like $. Yeah, you can still join like stupid like lists,
That's so good.
list games. But then there's also just like
Max
matchmaking,
cash.
regular matchmaking, and like it's fucking great. And there's still just StarCraft general chat and just like bullshit.
Yeah.
But then it also has just like match me with somebody and like put me on the ladder or whatever, and it's just it's the perfect combination of that shit.
Did you guys
It's
see
really
that
good.
Battle.net got renamed Battle.net again?
I know
It got renamed
Even
Blizzard
that.
Battle.net.
Yeah, well, whatever. It was named Battle.net, then it was just named the Blizzard client.
Yeah.
Worst
Yeah.
in our darkest
Awful.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awful.
And then I think it was because Destiny now uses it.
Well, yeah, it's weird now when you
That's-
have Battle.net open. It shows you Blizzard games on the side, and then there's a little subheading
God.
for Activision
Speaking of-
games.
But that's
of-
why it makes sense to put it back to Battle.net.
Yes.
Like, why renaming it Blizzard and then immediately just putting a Bungie game into it?
Also, I have to
God,
say,
my brain just
at
exploded.
as a historical like note, speaking of developers with decades spanning computer game heritage.
Yeah.
Bungie making a game for BattleNet.
I know.
Oh, yeah,
What?
weird.
What?
I know.
Go
Fucking
back.
weird.
Go back to
A
the
PC game.
Go back to the era
Yeah.
of like Marathon and Myth and Diablo 1,
Yeah.
which was the first, as I recall, the first BattleNet game. Right?
Yeah. Well, I remember Bungie ran Bungie.net,
Yes,
which
it was.
They
It was.
ran their own.
Because that was before Warcraft 2.
It was
Yeah.
Well,
No,
Warcraft
maybe
2.
not.
Warcraft
because
2 was not
Warcraft 2
BattleNet.
BattleNet Edition.
Yes.
Diablo was the
okay,
first BattleNet
So
game.
go back to
then StarCraft.
1997, right?
Yeah.
And be like, oh yeah, Bungie is going to make a game for this
Right.
in 20 years. Both of these companies will still be around.
Right.
Battle.net will fucking still be around.
Yep.
And one of them
crazy.
is going to make a game for the other
And
one.
yeah, it will have
That's crazy.
from the creators of Marathon and Marathon 2 comes their newest, basically aesthetically so close still.
Yeah, I know.
First
They
person
love
space
all that
thing.
same like
It's
shit. They love all
yeah,
that same
the heritage of
stuff.
that company has managed to actually be surprisingly intact over all
Yeah.
this time as well.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though it went through a way more weird path than Bungie did. I mean
Right.
Blizzard.
Than Blizzard
Than
did.
Blizzard
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah, man. That is so strange.
Yeah, it's
What a weird, just historical, fluke and
Yep.
twisty path,
Mm-hmm.
all alike.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess that's an episode, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Idle Thumbs. We will be back next month with another episode of this podcast, and in the meantime, with several more episodes of Important If True.
There's
our
also a
weekly show.
There's also a Patreon Q&A episode showing up sometime in between this and next month's Thumbs, for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they always show up.
Yeah, those show up alternating with episodes of Idle Thumbs on this feed. If you want to find out more about that Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/idlethumbs. And you can send us email, questions, comments, whatever you have based on what we've talked about or what is going on that you think we should, to questions@idlethumbs.net. Our website is idlethumbspodcast.com, and there you can subscribe to the show. Pass that to a friend. Rate us on iTunes if you think we deserve it. And we will be back soon. For Idle Thumbs, I am Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
See ya.
Bye. God, I thought you were about to say stay spicy,
I know,
and I
I
was
was like-
really upset. Like, you're wrong. We do that tomorrow. Japanese video games. You guys know they make games in Japan?
My uncle told
Yeah,
me.
my uncle, yeah.
My rich uncle.
My rich uncle plays Mario. My cool uncle plays Sonic.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
R.I.P.
See ya.